I've decided that these intros into these episodes need to be shorter, because most of the time when I listen to podcasts, like any podcast that I listen to, if they have any sort of like introduction or promos or sponsorships or whatever like that, I usually end up fast forwarding through that shit. So I'm just assuming that the listener out there is doing the same thing, because I would if I listened to this podcast. So we're going to try to make them shorter. And now I blank out is how I was planning on doing that. So we'll just get right to it. How's that sound? This episode is brought to you by the Refinery Barbershop. The Refinery Barbershop is located in Springville, Utah, and it is a great place for men to not just get a haircut, not just get their beard trimmed or get a shave, but really get some quality time in a healthy environment, supporting their well-being and their overall health. Honestly and truthfully, that's what the Refinery Barbershop does and what they create there. Go check them out online. You can book and schedule your appointments online at their website, refinerybarbershop.com. They have a Facebook page, they have an Instagram, all those kind of fun social media things. Go show them some love, go support the Refinery Barbershop. And when you are in there getting your hair cut or getting your beard trimmed, talk to your barber about their Energy is Love podcast and tell them that you heard about them on the show. And maybe they'll give you a free haircut. I don't think they will, but maybe. So our guest on today's show is Stephen Roccazzella. Yes, Stephen happens to be the owner of the Refinery Barbershop, but that's not why he's on the podcast. Stephen is an incredibly good friend of mine, and you've heard him on the podcast before. He was on like a year and a half ago. It was a while ago. It's been a while since he's been on the podcast. And I wanted him to come back on the show just to he's just a stud. He's just awesome and he's amazing. And him and I have amazing conversations. So it was fun to have him back on the show. Stephen is, yes, the owner of the Refinery Barbershop. He sits in the men's group that we have here in Salt Lake City. This month, he's going back to LA to continue the process to become a certified Wim Hof instructor. He's just an amazing man. He does a bunch of different things. And at the core of who he is, Stephen is all about helping people live happy, healthy, better versions of themselves. He's very, very good at helping people see themselves in a better light, I guess. Yeah, he definitely does that. But he's an amazing man, and we have a lot in common. So it's a fun episode. We really, really get cooking about an hour in. We got into some super good fucking stuff. So it's fun. It's enlightening as always, and hopefully enjoyable for you, the listener, to sit back, relax, and enjoy. Here we go with another episode featuring Stephen Roccazzella. I love you, man. Enjoy.
You're listening to the Energy is Love podcast.
Energy is love.
The Energy is the Love podcast.
The Energy is Love podcast.
Energy is love.
The Energy is Love podcast.
The podcast for the universe.
The Energy is Love podcast.
Does it sound weird?
It does. Get used to the volume of my voice.
It doesn't sound weird.
Yeah.
No, it's good.
Okay.
Big fucking deep breath. How are you, man?
I'm good. Thank you. I'm getting good.
Yeah.
I'm getting there. Yeah.
I always hate this fucking first part. Like, I never know what to. What I like is when this first part is, I start when the episode comes in, it's already like mid-conversation, and you feel like you just jumped in on the conversation and you don't really know how it started. That's what I like.
Okay.
So we just have to have a natural, normal conversation that comes in.
All right.
Are you nervous?
Yeah, maybe a little.
Yeah.
I don't know why. This is my fourth time doing a podcast.
I know, you seem super uncomfortable.
Yeah. Well, I got some stuff on my mind, but I'm hoping that as we just talk and do our thing, it'll go away for a bit.
You gotta relax. Pretend for a minute.
I'm so sorry. Relax.
Like, there's a lot of times that I start out and I feel super awkward, super uncomfortable. I'm not like in it. And so I put on the podcast mode. I put on like the I'm doing the podcast now, and then I pretend, and then after a minute it kind of fades away, and I'm in that space, and I feel good and everything like that. So
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
So I think that's enough of like, what are you looking at, babe?
I know I filled up the coffee, but I don't know where I put it.
I put it. It's over here on this side.
Okay.
Yeah. So we've got it if we need coffee. We're all set. Coffee, water, playing cards. What do you want to talk about?
I thought you were.
It's all up to you.
Oh no! Oh, don't do that to me.
It was like a year and a half ago. I think it was 2017, like September 2017 when you were on. Mm-hmm. It was back in the 90s, not like 1990, but episode-wise, it was back in the 90s. Mm-hmm. And now we're over 130 episodes. Wow. So it's been a long time. So introduce yourself briefly, because there's going to be people that didn't listen to that old episode who have no fucking idea who Stephen Roccazzella is. Okay. So give them a brief introduction of who you are.
All right. I am... what am I? Human. I'm Stephen Roccazzella. I am a friend of Craig and Stephanie's. I know Craig from the sheriff's office from way back in the day, and we've definitely become much closer and connected so many times over the last year and a half or so that I've been coming to men's group. And we have a mutual friend who was the one that invited me to group originally, Josh Harris. He's
Fucking Josh.
Yeah, he's been on the podcast before as well with his wife. They're amazing people. I own a barber shop in Springville, Utah, and I cut hair and do straight shaves and connect with awesome dudes all day, every day, and listen to music and shoot the shit and laugh, have a great time. So that's what I do for work. I'm a father of 3 kids that live in Nashville, Tennessee, and I practice the Wim Hof method and am going through the training to become an instructor. And that is about me right at the moment. That's who I am, I suppose, or the roles that I play, or how I would label myself, I guess.
Do we all feel uncomfortable? Do you feel uncomfortable, babe?
I did at first. I'm starting to ease into it.
Starting to relax a little bit.
Yeah. I totally forgot that you guys knew each other from before the group, from the sheriff's office.
Long time ago.
I forgot about that. It's so far removed. I'm like, oh yeah, that's right.
Stephen was a veteran badass by the time I started. And he had already been with the sheriff's office for a long time, like probably 5, 6, 7, 8 years.
I was there from 2002 until 2014.
Fuck.
Wow.
Yeah, I think I started there in like 07 or 08 or something like that. Mm-hmm. So I remember him, but we weren't necessarily friends or really knew each other. Yeah, I just knew of him and saw him, and he was a badass. You had an air about you. Because there were always guys that, like there were corrections officers, there were officers there that were just pieces of shit, that were worthless, that you knew weren't really good officers, that, were just a 9-to-5 type mentality and
8 and skate.
Yeah, just fucking terrible. And those guys, I think, stuck out. I don't know, because I think that if you were one of those guys, then those guys definitely didn't stick out. But those guys definitely stuck out in my mind, and I didn't want anything to do with them. And you were not one of those guys. You were on the opposite end of the spectrum that stuck out as far as like a squared away fucking badass officer that knows what he's doing and takes his job seriously and kind of carries himself that way. And it's funny because, like I said, we didn't really know each other, and I don't think we ever technically worked together. I don't think we were ever in the same housing unit or anything like that. And so yeah, we never really spent any time working together, but it's a big facility, and you run into people and you see people, and you definitely have a sense of the type of officer somebody is just by like all sorts of different shit, you know, the way they carry themselves, the way that they move. And they talk about that too, that prisoners do the same fucking thing, where the prisoners know by the energy that the officer carries and brings, the prisoners know who they can and can't fuck with, who they can and can't get away with things and all that kind of stuff. And so,
Yeah.
now
Thank you. Yeah, that makes me feel good. I hope that that's the legacy that I left there. It was a difficult time around. So I'd been with the sheriff's office and since 2002, and I never really had an easy assignment. I was always in like maximum security or, medium security, or that area that we talked about last time, quarantine, where everybody is coming off of drugs and they're not classified yet. And they're in a super, unsure space, and there's a lot of volatility and violence. And I saw some things really early on in my career that some people would never see their whole career. And that definitely shaped me. And what had happened was I went to the courthouse for a while to kind of take a break. I'd done like 3 years in maximum security and just needed a break. So I went to the courthouse and worked as a bailiff for a little while, just something chill. And in that time, I had some judges that I worked for that were just really good examples to me, and they took me under their wing, and they kind of filled me with this idea that I should leave law enforcement and go be an attorney. And so I ended up quitting the sheriff's office to go to school full time, and I still had a family I was trying to support. So I worked at night and then went to school during the day. And none of that really panned out the way that I expected. And I ended up having to go back to the sheriff's office. And that was in like 2009, I think, is when I got rehired. So you'd already been there by that point, and so was Josh. And I was not real happy about having to go back to the sheriff's office and go back to the jail. And I felt like I had failed. And I was starting to toy with this idea that this is all I'm ever going to be in life, is a fucking jailer. Not that that's a bad career, but it just didn't fit my soul. I knew that I wasn't supposed to be doing this for the rest of my life. And so I struggled with that a lot. And so I may or may not have had, well, I know I didn't have the right attitude internally, but I hoped that when I was there at work that I was present and that I was being the best that I could be, despite how much I hated fucking being there. But I've always had the attitude that I would rather die in that jail doing what was right than to live through a situation, where I was a coward, where I wussed out or I didn't do what was necessary. I didn't want to ever have to live with that. So I was kind of like, yeah, I took it seriously while I was there.
I don't see, that's just so funny because I don't know how you can't. Do you know what I mean? But there's so many people that don't take it seriously.
Yeah.
And it blows my mind when I used to see those people, work with those people. And I was just like, how can you not take this seriously?
Mm-hmm.
Because it felt like, is it a dangerous job? Absolutely, right?
Yeah.
And there were officers that got injured. There was officers that got attacked. And there's always that risk that is the undercurrent of everything that kind of goes on. But by and large, that's few and far in between. Like you could work your full 20 years of a career as whether a CO or a police officer, and never have an injury or never be attacked or anything like that. You definitely have physical altercations when you're trying to restrain somebody or something like that. But I never understood how those guys, and women too, didn't take it seriously. And I'm just like, what the fuck is your problem? Like, this is a serious thing that we're doing. It never, like, it literally just couldn't process through my brain. And it was the same thing like when I went to the road and I would, encounter other officers. A lot of times it was with other agencies and things like that. Most of the guys that I worked with were pretty squared away for the most part. And you'd work with other officers and it would just be like, how in the fuck are you not taking this serious?
Yeah.
Because it's even more of a danger because of the risk of, there's just more factors that you can't control as opposed to inside a correctional facility where you can control a lot of factors and variables.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think there's something about you and I think are very similar in that regards, where we took shit seriously and we did a good job and we took our job seriously. But I think that part of us too, that is similar, where it's like, oh, this is killing the inside person that really exists.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's like, I used to imagine the way I would try to describe it to other people who didn't understand that line of work would be, you're like this ball of light in a dark place, and they see that. And when I say they, I mean those who are there incarcerated, and they will just suck every little bit of that light out of you and absorb it into their darkness. And at the end of the day, when it's time to go home to your family or your personal life, you have no light left in you, nothing left to give. They've just sucked everything out of you. I have a theory on why some officers are just shit at that job. It's because thinking about everything that might happen to them that day or what they might have to deal with is so difficult to be in that place that they just check out and don't think about those things. And it causes them to disconnect from the situation that they're in. And it's really easy in that place to just turn and look the other way. You can be in your housing unit and you see prisoners start to do things that they're not supposed to do. And it might be mellow, like they're passing something back and forth and you don't quite know what it is. So you can just, I'll just assume that it's, a pencil or something. Someone needed to borrow a pencil, and you can just turn and look the other way. And that's what I think a lot of officers do, is they just turn and look the other way. But I had this mindset that, and again, I might be repeating myself from the last podcast, but if a lot of people haven't, okay,
it's too long ago. I don't even fucking remember it.
All right. I had this mindset, was like, if I confront the situation that is happening, I have to be ready to take it to the death. You talk about taking your job seriously. That's what it means. If I open my mouth, if I see two prisoners exchange something and they're kind of shady about it and it's not quite out in the open, but I caught it, I have to ask myself, if I go confront these two guys about what just happened, am I willing to take that to the death? Because if I'm not, then my word means nothing. If I turn my head and look the other way, then they know, okay, we've got this guy. He's not going to do anything. We're in charge of the housing unit today, not him or her. So when I would see something happen, I would just take a deep breath and be like, okay, I'm going to go confront these guys and I'm going to see what they're up to. And usually it's nothing, but sometimes it's something, and I have to be ready to deal with that, whatever it is. Maybe they were passing a weapon, or they were passing drugs, or, maybe it was just a candy bar or a pencil or something like that. But I have to be ready to take that all the way to whatever the outcome is. And a lot of officers just don't even want to think that way. It's just too difficult to even get into that mindset. And they're like, well, whatever it is, it's not worth my life. And I just didn't think that way. I thought, I'm here. I'm being paid to keep the fucking lid on this place for the next, 8 to 12 hours. So I'm going to do what's necessary. And yeah, in the process, it just destroyed my fucking soul. So I think that's why a lot of officers are just shit at that job, because they don't even want to think about, all the terrible stuff that could happen in the next second.
I used to really like there was a point where I came to the realization in my career in law enforcement that it was like, it's the same kind of thing where if I decide something, then I have to stick with that decision all the way to the end.
Yeah.
And I think that is that, like that. I think that's one of the fallacies, right? Where the fact is that it doesn't allow for any room for error. It doesn't allow any room for like the subtleties of what can take place. And because what I'm thinking in my head is times where it was like times to go hands on. We're going to somebody's going in cuffs. Somebody's being restrained. And it was like, you ask them, you tell them, and then guess what? It's not an option anymore. You are going to, this is the end result. And like, there's a part of my brain that breaks because there's so much of me that's like, fuck yes, that's exactly what you have to do as an officer, because that's how you protect yourself. You protect the other people, the other officers that you're working with. You protect people from this experience or from this moment. But the fact is, like, I don't really, there's this other part of me, like that soul part of me that got killed and died, and the light inside of me that's like, you don't really have to do that. Like, you can ask somebody to do something. You can tell somebody to do something. You can even start the process of going hands-on and trying to physically restrain somebody, and then you can just ease off.
Yeah.
You can just go back. You can just relax. Do you know what I mean? There were a lot of times when I would, think about how many times in the jail where you would cuff somebody up and that didn't mean anything because they were already incarcerated. They were already, in jail, but it's just a temporary restraint for the moment. It's a cool down essentially. And I would implement that same practice on the street as a police officer, where it's like, just because I'm putting somebody in handcuffs, that doesn't mean suddenly that they're arrested. That doesn't mean suddenly that I have to do anything other than that. But that, I think, was the mentality of a jailer and not a police officer, because I didn't see that a lot from other police officers. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where it's like, I can just put them in handcuffs and there's nothing wrong with that. However, I don't want to fucking sit and talk about dumb shit of being a fucking police officer, because I'm sitting there like, because as soon as you put somebody in handcuffs on the street, now I have violated their Fourth Amendment.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I have to have just cause to do so. And that was the issue that a lot of times people would like call me out on, meaning like supervisors and things like that. And I always had just cause because I knew what I was doing and it is justifiable.
Yeah.
But at the same time, that's like the slippery slope where, oh, now you're fucking restraining me. Now it's a whole nother fucking ball game and everything changes.
Yeah.
Baby, go ahead.
Oh, I do have a question. I want some coffee too.
Okay, I'll pour you coffee while you ask your question.
How much of that mentality of, once I make this decision, this is where it's going to go, and I have to follow that through all the way to the death. And like, in a sense, even though, sorry, I was going for it. You were mentioning how it doesn't have, the handcuffs can be just a cool down period, but you're still doing that same thing, taking that initiative of, this isn't going the way it needs to go, so I'm going to control this. Like, how much of that comes over into your life where now still, even though you're away from that and removed, you still have that mentality of, no, I'm going to make this decision and I'm going to follow it through. And even though other information comes in that shows that you could probably shift your train of thought, but you're on that track and you are not coming off, and you are going to stick to your decision at the beginning and not really have that room. I'm trying to use my words carefully because all I can think of right now is avocados. I won't go deeper, but avocado.
You don't have to use your words carefully. You're okay. We know your husband's an asshole from time to time.
No, I did not say that. Why do you always say that?
Because that's what you're talking about.
I'm talking about a moment that makes more sense.
I don't even know what the avocado thing is.
Oh my God.
What is
okay. It's okay. So
I was starting to think you were talking about avocados and handcuffs, and this was going to go someplace like kinky for a minute. Maybe not.
I don't see how those two things mix.
I can make that happen. Like, I can draw those lines to make perfect sense with that. Anyways, no, there was a situation with our son and eating avocados, and he said he was full, but he didn't like the way the seasoning that I put on it or something. And oh my God, there was the dumbest line draw in the sand about it. It was one of those moments. It makes sense now.
I have drawn some very dumb lines in this.
Everybody has.
That's for sure.
Me as well. And him as well.
Yeah.
Like, you guys both give each other that look of, like, shit. You know?
Do you feel like you still have it? I mean, do you feel like that aspect is still kind of challenging for you to,
No.
You don't think so?
No, I've let go of that a lot. I mean, like, there's obviously times in life when you need to be determined and you need to stick to your decision and things like that, but not in that way. Like, I'm much more open, and I've realized in that jail environment, like, there's this immense pressure to stay in control. And control is an illusion in a lot of ways, and life has taught me that, especially over the last few years, that I'm not in control of really anything except my own body. So yeah, I let go of a lot of things and just let life happen now. But yeah, there's definitely a place where I still can apply willpower and determination and set goals. But yeah, I don't even think like a law enforcement officer anymore. I hope not.
Yeah.
I don't even want, And it's it's nice because so many of my people in my life now, a lot of my clients and friends that have met me since I left, they're just like, dude, I can't believe that you were ever a jailer or a cop or whatever. You know, they just can't even imagine me being that way. And I'm like, okay, good. That's a good thing, because I did not like myself when I was that guy.
Can you think of the last time, the last time that you had to turn it on? Like the last time when you had to embody that same person, that same energy because of a situation that you found yourself in?
Like since leaving?
Yeah. Like, has there been a moment where you realized you had shifted back into that fucking mindset and that role because of something that was going on?
Yeah, but it was not nearly as cool or as grandiose as you would, as maybe you're hoping for. But yeah, the last time that I can remember having to turn that on a little bit was being at a music festival, and a fight broke out, and one of my friends tried to get in the middle of it and break it up, and I just had to just run in there and like physically grab her and pick her up and remove her from the situation. And that was the last time I think I really felt like I had, where I got that same kind of energetic charge of like this, there's a fight happening and like I have to do something to deal with it, you know, or at least keep this particular individual safe from that situation. And it wasn't that big of a deal, but that's the last thing I can remember. If you're going to put me on the spot and maybe think of something right now, that's it. It's been a long time since I've had to be violent with anyone or use like physical force or, engage in that way.
What about like the heightened state of awareness? And I mean, you can almost, I mean, it's safe to say that it's paranoia at times, right? That heightened state of like,
yeah,
turned on and alert and focused. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? But because there's times where we do it just as humans normally and naturally, and it's okay. Mm-hmm. And it's not to say that it's not okay when cops do it, but when it's that conscious shift in your head and in your mind where suddenly you're like, your ears perk up and you fucking are on point. Can you think of a recent time or the most recent time you had something like that?
Yes, but I don't know if I want to share it.
Well, you have to. Not just It's not very often though, right?
No, it's no. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not. But I mean, you know, it's like I still when I'm like going to a situation where I feel like there could possibly be an altercation, like I think and plan the whole thing out. Okay, if this person shows up and does this, then this is how I'm going to deal with it. So I do catch myself going into that mode, but there's a very specific circumstance in my life where that can happen. But in most of my life, like that's not even really a concern for me anymore. I don't even think about getting in a fight or having to, it just doesn't happen. Like I've learned so much about how to stay calm and to de-escalate and things. And in the barbershop, like where I spend a lot of my time, that just doesn't happen, and me being away from all of my family members, they all live in different states. I'm kind of out here on my own, but I'm not on my own because I have incredible friends. So yeah, like there's not a lot of drama in my life anymore, where that even becomes a thought. I don't know. That's such a vague, shitty answer. I'm sorry. I just like, I don't want to be,
I like it.
I don't, yeah, there's this one particular person that could appear in my life where I feel like I might have to deal with it in that way, but the odds of that happening are so low. But yeah, I still play it out in my head every once in a while.
Baby, can you think of the last time I did that you saw me do it?
What I was actually thinking was, it was a moment that you were on and I could see and I could feel like the air that you had, but it was such, I also had another aspect of it because you were so in control of yourself. And that was nice to see. It wasn't like this, to fend off on another topic. Here wasn't the macho man coming out and your masculinity feeling threatened and like taking it up to a level just because you're a man. It was, we were in Portland and this very mentally ill guy was just acting completely sketchy around us. And it was with a group of us. And I remember thinking it was my fault because like I was watching him because I thought, oh, you're going to double back. Like here's something that's up with that. And then he got just completely freaked out and started screaming at us all. Like, he's like, do you want to fight? Do you want to fight? Because I looked at him. I don't know if it was me or everybody else, but.
Oh, it was in the park, huh?
Yeah. And I was super, like, I was scared.
Oh, I remember that.
And.
I think we were high too. That didn't
We
help.
were. It was illegal there. But I was so like nervous, and he was so aggressive and wanting to fight and just waiting for that opportunity to get that go signal. And it's like all of a sudden everybody kind of was like cowered. And here's you, this big tall guy that handled that situation. And like your presence was on. I could tell you were on, but it was such a calming. You're like, no, man, nobody wants to fight. We're not looking at you, dude. He's like, don't look at me. You're like, we're not. It's cool. Nobody wants to fight, man. You're good. And just, it was that. I thought so many different situations and people in my life where that would not have been it. It would have been, well, they have to now attack and escalate the situation. So I had just that pure panic inside of me waiting for that, but felt safe and feeling you control that where it was on, but not afraid because I don't know. It was just kind of.
I had forgotten about that. Like
I did not.
It was just straight up a crazy homeless guy.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Which is super normal. Not that all homeless people are crazy, but just somebody that's suffering from some mental illness, some schizophrenia, who's homeless. And the people that we were with, because we just got up and left, basically. We just removed ourselves from that experience.
You removed us. You handled the group.
Yeah.
You were like, everybody, this is what we're doing. And we were all like, okay, this is what we're doing.
You know what? I can't think of one I can share with you that is fairly recent. So on one of my, I take a lot of plane trips every year to go see my kids. I fly out to see them, 6 to 8 times a year. So every couple of months I'm getting on a plane to Nashville. And I remember one time in particular when a guy, like, I always watch who's getting on the plane. So that's one of those things where, I guess that's a heightened sense of awareness would, kind of show itself in me. And the dude, I watched him come down the aisle and he had no luggage with him whatsoever. It was just him by himself. Now, that doesn't mean that he didn't check a bag and just didn't have a carry-on, but I thought it was weird that he didn't have a carry-on or anything with him. And like, I hate to profile, but he fit what has been beat into our heads by the media, as being somebody that might be from a region of the world where he might want to do something shitty on a plane. I hate to even think like that, but again, all that mindset was there. Yeah. And he ended up sitting right next to me on the plane. And the whole flight, he was just, it's about a 4-hour flight. He was just super fidgety and anxious and couldn't sit still. And he kept getting up and going to the bathroom. And, on a 4-hour flight, he probably went to the bathroom 3 or 4 times. Well, on this one time he was in there for a while because I'm like paying attention now. And he was in there. And as he was in there, I just started playing through all of these scenarios in my head. And I was just telling myself, okay, most people on this plane are probably completely oblivious to this guy and his behavior. So, like, I started playing out scenarios. If he comes out of the bathroom and starts to do this or anything, like, I was ramping myself up and getting ready to act because I'm not going to just sit there and be a victim. So I got myself to where I was starting to get an elevated heart rate and I was starting to get those weird, like, energetic, waves shooting through my body and, just getting ready and prepared because he was in there for a while. And I was just thinking of all the things he could be. What if he's pulling something out of his ass or out of his pants or something?
Because we know that there's plenty of things that'll fit up an ass.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Later in my, actually something that could actually contribute to that thought process was when one of my clients introduced me to the kink world, and I ended up at a few of these like kink parties that I was just curious. And yeah, there's a lot of things you can put up an ass that are much bigger than you would think. This is okay to talk about on the podcast, right?
Okay to talk about on the podcast.
Yeah. So something that you could hurt somebody else with easily fits up an ass, or something even explosive or whatever. So yeah, so I'm running through all of these scenarios. And so yeah, that's definitely one I
do that shit on planes all the time. And it pisses me
you're
off.
on planes a lot too. Yeah.
What, babe?
It just kind of sounds like you could have also leaned toward put shit up your ass on a plane all the time. You're like, I do that shit on a plane all the time. So you about spit your drink. So you pay attention.
I do, and I hate it because majority of the time when I fly, I'm pretty tuned out because I fucking hate it, and I don't mind flying. I just don't like people, and I don't like the stress of it and the chaos of it. So I have my headphones on. I'm listening to podcasts. I'm watching a movie. I'm doing something. So I'm super like tuned out, and then every now and then I'll be sitting there, and it's usually like boarding time when it's a lot of chaos and a lot of people coming and going and moving and everybody's trying to get to their seats, or even like on long flights where people will get up and hang out in the aisle and walk around and move. And my brain, unfortunately, and I kind of don't like that it still does it, but it plays all those what if scenarios.
Yeah.
Like I look at that fucking cockpit and I'm like, you guys aren't stopping anybody from getting in that fucking cockpit.
Yeah.
Like there's so many times that cockpit door is open and all they've done is like parked the food cart in front of it. And I look at the flight attendants, and granted the majority of them are women, even though there's plenty of male flight attendants. And I'm just like, the level of violence that people can do without a weapon, right? No weapon at all. I don't think people really understand what that looks like and what that entails. And so I'll sit there and play all these scenarios, and I picture like because it's always, what am I going to do, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to sit on the flight and pull out my cell phone and record it. I'm going to go fuck some shit up. And I think not constantly, but I always think about how I don't need a tool. I don't need a weapon. I don't need anything to stop somebody.
Right.
And what that looks like, especially in such a confined space of an airplane, right? Because there's no room to do anything at all. And I used to always think about this too when I used to carry all the time, because when I was off duty, I was still carrying all the time. And you're always playing those what if scenarios for active shooters and things like that at malls or at movie theaters or wherever the fuck I was. I mean, I do it at the fucking gas station. I used to. And I always think about the fact is, in a scenario when you have to restrain somebody or do something to stop a threat, to stop somebody, there's the potential that other people are going to get injured and hurt. And there's like a certain level of, I'm okay with that. Like if I have to, I'm never going, I mean, I'm not going to go off on the tangent of what I used to think about in regards to carrying when I had to carry off duty or when I chose to carry off duty. But like on a plane, I'm going to have to climb over seats. I'm going to have to push people out of the way. I'm going to have to get physical in regards to getting myself to the point where I can engage and stop whatever's going on. And that may entail, hurting some people, not consciously or like punching people to get them out of my way, but like just the physical action of having to climb over people, push people out of the way, push people down and step on them to get to whatever it is so that I can stop it. But I don't do that a lot, but it does happen. It does. I mean, let's say like maybe 40% of the time that I fly, I'll spend a little bit of time in that space on a flight, especially if it's a long flight, because I got so much fucking time to, you can only listen to so many podcasts, but I was thinking about, this made me think about when you went to Arizona.
Well, I'm sitting here thinking about you getting on a plane tomorrow, and I'm so.
I know I got to get on a flight tomorrow.
Now my anxiety levels are up, and I'm like.
And because I think about all those cell phone footage and those videos that we see of shit happening on flights, and those are just crazy people. Yeah, those are just people that are having a hard moment in their life, and unfortunately, sometimes they have to be physically restrained.
Yeah.
And
there is zero tolerance on an airplane.
Yeah, I think about that too. There has been plenty of times where I am like the crazy person in my head. And like the flight attendant will come up and be like, sir, you need to, like when I fly internationally to Canada, they give their fucking announcements right before the flight takes off as they're kind of taxiing out to get ready to actually leave the ground. And they're talking through everything. And if you don't fly a lot, yes, please listen to that. But if you fly a lot, I have no desire whatsoever to listen to anything that you're saying at this point.
Right.
Especially when you want to sell me your fucking credit card. But I will keep my headphones on and I'll be listening to whatever I'm listening to. And there's some airlines, and I don't know if it's just when you fly to Canada or if it's Air Canada, the airline Air Canada, but they don't let you wear your headphones. Like you have to you have to take your headphones off
to listen to the
listen
spiel.
to their fucking shit.
Yeah.
So they'll come up and be like, "Sir, blah blah blah, you need to," and I'm just like, "Bitch, you fucking touch me. Say one more fucking thing. Tell me to put my seat rest up. Tell me to like do this, do that. I'm going to fucking lose it and explode and everybody's going to die because I'll take this fucking plane down. I don't give a shit."
Damn. I hope that no one from
Put it into context.
no one from the government is listening to this podcast. Because you just got put on a no-fly list,
I don't have to worry about
just
you
now.
going anywhere now. Like,
No, but it's funny. And that's the subtlety of how people, good people do crazy things.
Yeah.
And you see that all the time where somebody just has had enough.
Well, maybe good people have crazy thoughts,
Yes.
yeah.
but don't do crazy things.
Yeah, I have plenty of crazy thoughts all the time.
Yeah.
So Arizona, what were you saying?
When you
to
flew
Arizona.
down to Arizona and you had the guy
were
that
nerv-
was like straight up trying to kidnap you for
my
sex
God.
trafficking, because that's totally what it was.
Yeah, it was. It took me a little bit to figure that out.
Tell
but
that-
when I did
tell that story.
Tell that story. Okay.
Because it's real.
Well, I know, but
you hear
I'm
about
feeling
that
like,
shit
oh,
on the
what
news.
a dumb woman.
You're not a dumb woman.
I know I'm not, but that's like,
You hear that shit on the news and you're like, that shit never fucking happens. That's dumb. Like, there's so many times where you hear stories on the news and you're like, whatever, that shit never really happens. And that straight up exactly is like key, like word for word, example for example, what happened to you and what took place.
did not happen.
Well, granted, you aren't kidnapped in a sex trafficking ring right now. So no.
It was the first time I was on a plane I had flown by myself to you, but it was the first time I flew where I didn't have somebody waiting for me. Like, okay, hold my hand, walk me across the street, whatever. Yes, I've lived a sheltered life. But I was super excited and I was just really open to everything. I was feeling so good and so much love. And I was just like, so much had been beat into my head on how you don't talk to strangers. You don't do all of these, be careful. Don't let anybody know where you're going. Don't, all these precautions that you constantly have to take. And I was shedding all of these programs. So I was talking to everybody and I was sitting next to this guy who started a conversation with me. And instead of, not having the conversation, which is what I would normally do, we got into a deep conversation and we just talked the entire time. And I'm sitting here in my mind like, look at me being all outgoing, talking to strangers. But then it was coming up where I was staying and it started off with, and how he did it was brilliant. And I think I wouldn't just tell him where I was staying. How did that happen? But because we were flying in at night and he was telling me that I needed to be careful and really hoped that I wasn't going anywhere by myself at night because it was a real dangerous area where we were at. And that kicked in my, well, what do you mean? Like what areas? Like it depends on where you're staying. If you're, there's certain areas if you're staying, you'll be okay. But if you're in like this area, I don't remember what it was, then you need somebody with you. It's not safe for you. And that completely hit my, like, oh my God, I'm not safe. I'm not safe. Where is it? Where are you staying? And so in that moment, I shared where I was staying and he's like, yeah, you don't go, you'll be okay if you're really cautious and you don't go anywhere by yourself. And how are you getting there? And I've got my car at the airport and I don't want you to, be weirded out by this, but I'll give you a ride to make sure you're safe. And then that hit my like, oh, you're the danger.
Yeah.
And so
that's good.
Yeah.
A lot of people would not have even picked up on that. So
It didn't stop there though.
No, it did not stop there. But like the way I shifted stopped there. Like I realized what was going on. So then it was, well, I'm going to change my hotel. I'm going to find another place. I'm going to, he was like, well, where do you want to go? You don't have to do that. And then was like trying to talk me out of changing it because I was okay where I was. And then, well, where was I going to go beyond that? I'm like, I don't know. I'll just find, I'll get one of those areas and the first place that I contact that has an opening, that's where I'll go. And, I started like really drawing out and creating separation. And he kept offering again and, he feels bad. He doesn't want to make me afraid. And, he's still willing and just, it was super nice. I kept it super nice and then took my time. I like kind of played around in the airport. I wasn't in a hurry to leave. I had a shuttle that was set up. I just had to call when I was ready. So I took my time up there, just like really killed a lot of time, giving plenty of separation. And I don't even know how long I was in the airport. I was there for quite a while before I finally called the shuttle, got it taken care of, and went to the other side. And as they were doing construction in the airport, so I even got looped around and took longer than I meant to because I got lost. So when I made it to the right side of the airport where the shuttles were, and I was standing out there, he approached me again. And I'm like, oh my God, how did you? And he's like, you look like you're lost and I'm worried about you. I don't want you to, are you sure my car's right here? And, to get going. I'm like, oh no, I'm good. I've got my shuttle. I've got my new place. Everything's fine. I got it. Thank you though. And I watched, and he walked up and got in the passenger side of the vehicle.
Passenger side?
Passenger side. And then they left. And I was like, oh my God. So then I was nervous.
Holy shit.
But
Like that's seriously how women get kidnapped and taken advantage of for whatever whether it's sex trafficking or whether it's whatever it is.
Yeah.
Like that is the MO of a fucking predator.
I made it.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't even say just women, but anybody
Anyone,
who doesn't present as, we're not going to mess with this individual because they're going to be a motherfucker to deal with.
Yeah.
Women,
could be,
children,
teenagers.
could be even like, kind of more.
So you want to say weak men.
Yeah, I do. Anybody who is presenting weakness, because there's a lot of women you don't want to fuck with either, and they're going to present that right away, and so I mean, it doesn't have to be, but I know,
I wasn't presenting weakness though. I was presenting friendly, open, communicative. It was just that
but that can be interpreted by evil people as weakness. That's one of the quandaries working like in law enforcement or in the jail, because if you show too much openness, kindness, concern, they'll just latch onto that and just manipulate it and work it.
It's like straight manipulation. Like the way you describe it, there were so many times where as a police officer, you would have cocksuckers that would manipulate you that way, who would play fucking games and who would, do you know what I mean? Like would always like run circles around you and always be the nice guy and always like, dude, like what's going, you don't need. And as a police officer, you have to be like, okay, motherfucker, like we're done. Like we're done. Right. And so I was listening to you talk about that because I've heard that story before.
Yeah, because I was proud of myself for not even getting scared after that.
Yeah,
and
no,
being
you
like,
did
I'll
good.
still talk to people.
Yeah, super good. But I think that like in the future, and this is one thing with society where we don't want to be assholes and we don't want to be mean. But like in the future, like if you had just, you're leaving the plane or the next time you see him, or even because if you're sitting next to him, it's kind of difficult because it's super uncomfortable. Yeah. But like the soonest opportunity you have to like literally turn, face him and say, you need to leave me alone. Like you need to suddenly become a bitch. Yeah. Because otherwise they will take advantage of that over and over and over and over again. And we don't want to, in society, we don't want to come off as a bitch or an asshole. We don't want to be rude to people, right? But those type of people, you have to suddenly shift your energy to where it's like, listen, motherfucker, you need to leave me alone. Otherwise, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z, whatever it may be. But if you just shift and go away from the mindset of like, I'm being nice and I don't want to be rude, because he could just be really genuine and he could just be really nice.
I said that a lot to my head.
Yeah.
I could be just be crazy. He could be, I could be making all this up.
Yeah. And you totally weren't.
Yeah.
That's exactly what he was trying to do and exactly what he was reaching for. And if you just shift suddenly and be like, look, and we always feel bad. Like we always feel bad when we're assholes and we don't want to offend people or we don't want to upset people or hurt people's feelings, even if they're complete fucking strangers. But at the same time, like you have to, I don't say you have to because you didn't. You were still nice, but you were assertive and you took control and you did what you needed to do. But at the same time, like there comes a point where you have to like draw that line in the sand of, listen, motherfucker, like we're done. You need to leave me alone.
Be careful with that. It's not just that. It's like if I'm being protective over somebody, that line in the sand is much closer. Oh, and I know that, okay.
Yeah, like if it's you and Stevie on this flight.
That's handled very differently. But I was by myself at that point. So it wasn't so much of when I felt, I knew that like this is a dangerous thing now. Now I'm uncomfortable. Now those voices in my head are being like, this is what you need to do. This is you need to act from this point. But in no way would I have become, it would have taken a lot to get me to the part to where I would have become aggressive, because what's programmed for me is when you get aggressive with men, they get aggressive back. They're more, it's worse. So you keep the situation calm. You keep it polite. You don't threaten their masculinity. You don't. And that's just, and I'm not saying like all men, like you can't walk up to somebody and not smile at him and he's like, what bitch? I'm not saying that. I'm saying men that, or women, but my experience has been men. So that's what I can relate to, that are going to cause harm, that are why there is the fear out there. That's why there's a problem. Those ones are like, I'm nervous. It's scary.
Yeah.
I'll get to that. I'm not just going to be like, okay, I'll get in the car with you. I will get to that, but that's not going to be something that turns on right away. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe it should. Maybe I should adjust that. But that to me says, well, now I've pissed him off. Now I'm instead of looking elsewhere, he's going to be locked on.
Well, I think my solution to that dilemma of when to be aggressive and when not to be aggressive just comes back to being present and just trusting the feeling you have inside, the energy that is, happening, and you'll just know what to do when that time comes, because I probably avoided a lot of violence being inflicted upon me in the jail by showing like where I knew in my head exactly what this dude's trying to do. I understand the level of evil and violence that I'm dealing with in this individual, and maybe turning on that fight or flight response would have escalated, but instead staying cool and kind of playing dumb a little bit, even though I'm on to him, and just being a little nicer, still not giving him anything that he's asked after, but just being, chill about it. That might have saved me from God knows how many fights, because I got in plenty anyway, but they were always kind of like there was zero options left at that point, so a little diplomacy isn't always a bad thing, but just being aware inside is, so it could
go piss.
Do we just keep talking?
Yeah, you don't have to fucking stop him.
So, yeah, however you handled it worked out fine, because you're safe and that dude is somewhere else, and
Yeah, I heard something when I said that I'd never thought of before, and now I'm feeling very, very ashamed of myself. Like if I would have made a little bit of noise, like who would have noticed? Who would have noticed him? What kind of, like, what might that have done? Because obviously the situation, that wasn't just something that happened on a whim. That wasn't an impulse. That was something that was planned out.
Right.
And that was something that they probably will plan out in the future. And like that didn't occur to me until right then when I was like, oh, look elsewhere and not be focused on me. Like that was it was completely selfish in a sense too, because I was so concerned with self-preservation that my brain didn't go, well, who else is going to be a part of this now? Yeah. I didn't think of that. I feel so like shitty.
I wouldn't.
Now.
I wouldn't.
I wouldn't. Maybe I could have shone a light on them a little bit, but it was like, I need to be self-preservation.
Yeah.
What'd I miss?
Me realizing that I'm selfish. So.
I essentially have one of my best friends and my wife that I get to talk to right now. And you guys don't really know each other all that well. You know each other through me and what I talk about in regards to the other person. So like you have a vision, not a vision, but you have a...
I don't know if I want to know the way he's like what you...
No. I mean, none of it's bad. None of it is negative in any way, shape, or form.
I make you happy all the time.
You do make me happy all the time. But baby, what questions do you have for Steven, taking into consideration that you only know him through me and what I share with you? Because it's not that you guys haven't met before. I think you've met before.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
before.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I could ask questions, but I also know, the bro code. I don't know how much is going to be.
I'll let you know if you violated that or
if
not.
I violated the bro code.
We can break the bro code.
I want to know, like, the way you smile when I'm not around. Like, how does he breathe when I'm not around? What side of him do you get to see where he's free
Oh,
when
you're
I'm
going to
not
ask me
around?
a question about Craig.
I do.
Okay.
I want to like the part that I don't see on that part. Just, and then I want to wrap it back around to, anyways. Cool now.
Okay, ask me that one more time. How do
I act and behave when?
No, not act and behave. How do you? I want to hear about your free moments, like the way you smile. What is like? How does he get light? And you see like the weight come off and the smile and this. Like, no, I feel dumb now. I don't want to talk anymore.
Don't feel dumb. No, it's a good
no.
question.
You just got. I'm a very like methodical, overthinking, deep thinking person, and so I'm going to analyze that question, and and so I'm pausing, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to answer.
Okay.
Like how do I see Craig? Like his behavior.
Like what's he like?
his-
What's your take on him? Because you're going to see a different side of Craig than I do.
I don't.
You don't think?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so because I've spent time with him in different dynamics. Like, well, when we're in men's group together, that's where I spend the majority of my time with him. But he's in like men's group mode
Yeah.
where it's time to put in some work,
Oh,
and it's time to focus on these other men and then focus on himself when it's his time to talk. And so I see him in that environment, and I don't notice a big difference really. I mean, like I think he's pretty.
Baby, I think you think that like as soon as I get away from you, I just like, fucking relax and get to like be myself and let it all hang out. And then when we're together, like I'm on edge and like conscious
kind of, but I didn't mean it like rude. I was like excited to hear about happy moments for you. So it was like I wanted to see that part where maybe you'd be nervous to tell me, because then I'll interpret it as soon as you go away, then you take a deep breath, like the happy things that maybe you would be afraid to share. But fine, we're done talking about it.
I don't imagine Craig being much different around you and the family than he is around me or anybody else. And
That's pretty cool.
like I can tell you that like when Craig and I interact with each other, like we don't talk about the fucking football game or the weather, although we might, acknowledge that it's a beautiful day, but like we don't waste oxygen talking about frivolous, lighthearted shit. Like we usually get deep every time we talk, and those are the kind of conversations that I like to have.
Yeah.
I don't care about your fucking shoes or the football game or whatever. Like we don't talk about politics. Like we talk about good, meaningful, deep shit that makes us better human beings and better men. That's the Craig that I know.
Yeah.
So maybe
That's
I should.
not who he is here.
So maybe I should be asking you the
Kids
same
football all the
question.
time.
Yeah.
Like seriously.
No, no.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Because like there's this dynamic in my barber shop where I have another barber that works for me. He's an awesome dude. His name's Braxton, but he is an absolute world-class bullshitter. Like he can talk about music, he can talk about sports, he can talk about politics, and he just bullshits with his clients and just entertains them, and they just eat it up and they love it. When you sit in my chair, like I want to know about like where you're at in life right now. How's your wife? How's your kids? How's your prostate? How's your, that's always a question I ask, people. Like it's kind of like, it just kind of breaks the attention a little bit,
Yeah.
like when they first sit down and they're getting ready for their haircut. Not that that's a tense situation, but just to kind of get them out of the world and get them present, get them to go inside a little bit, which is something that I learned from, Craig and like men's group. And so I try to make every haircut, if I can, like a little mini men's group session where like I want to talk about the real shit that's going on in your life, and I want to connect with you and love you and know about you, and I'm going to share my stuff. Yeah, I'm not interested in like meaningless conversations anymore. At maybe it's my age or my station in life, and that's the relationship that I have with this man sitting across the table from me. It's deep, it's real, it's heavy, it's uncomfortable sometimes. and it's beautiful all the time. So
know why he loves you so much. That is awesome.
Yeah, I don't know if you were expecting him to say, "Oh yeah, dude, as soon as he gets a men's group, he just sits down and talks about what a huge pain in the ass Stephanie is and blah 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 and all this kind of."
Is that how it sounded? That's
like,
not.
Because I'm not going to go there.
No. I don't want to hear that.
But I think that if you were being a pain in the ass, he would tell you you're being a pain in the ass. So you don't need to know that for me or not. I think he would probably tell you, and hopefully you would do the same for him.
No. What I meant, I don't know if I'll be able, because I suck it. I'm trying really hard to figure out, like, what I mean doesn't always come out.
Okay.
Like, there's so much, like, I try.
Well, I'm just going to interpret the best I can.
That's all anybody can do. I was looking for a way to share in the joy of maybe parts that I don't get to see where he can breathe, like the happy parts. I was wanting to see the parts that make him happy that I don't get to see. So I'm excited to see more of his happiness. And that's what I kind of wanted to sneak peek into is like, I don't know. That's what I was kind of looking at.
I think maybe I have missed out on some of those moments with him as well. When, probably a month ago in men's group, I had like a huge breakthrough, and I had to end up like going outside and just like getting some air and like cooling down afterwards. And like while I was out there, I missed a beautiful moment for Craig where he got to feel the gratification of putting himself out there in a vulnerable place and saying things to me that were uncomfortable for him and probably really hard to say. And as a result of that, I went to a place that has absolutely changed my whole life. And he got the opportunity to feel the joy and gratification and the adrenaline, because there was some adrenaline going, of that moment. And I missed it too, because I was outside trying to put myself back together. And so, and I'm kind of sad I missed it, but, so I
love that you were able to separate. You didn't have that fear of missing out thing that's so big. You're like, this is what I need right now. So I'm going to step out and do that.
Thank you.
What do you, just the fact that you're able to sit down and like tell me about your prostate in a sense, that deep connection that you can do with men.
It's fine as far as I know, by the way.
It's
Thank
fine.
you.
I'm so glad to hear that. There are guys that you go in for the haircut, but just to have that point, that is kind of an intimate exchange. Mm-hmm. And they're like having your hands on somebody, changing their appearance, and that like being so in their space that, I don't know, I guess I find intimate exchanges in so many different things. Mm-hmm. And it can go of like, that's a moment to share and be open with somebody, or feel like you have to protect because that's so much in your space. There are things that I should do and be comfortable with that I cannot because it's too much in my space. Mm-hmm. So like being there with the guys at that point and being able to have that deep connection and not just entertain their thoughts and then move on to the next client. Like, is that something that you've always been able, or is that something that's kind of like grown and, I don't know, become deeper with the group and being able to connect inside yourself more?
So you're asking, is it something, have I always been able to just like fall into a space with another person and just be present with them and connect with them? Or is that something that I've learned over time?
Yeah.
I think it's a little bit of both. I think I have a natural ability for it. And then I think over time, through my experience with the sheriff's office, and then especially with, men's group, I think I've definitely honed my abilities that way, and I understand more what's happening. And so, yeah, I think it's a combination of both. I'm a very open, like, I just want to love everybody. Mm-hmm. I really do. And I really credit a lot of my success as a barber to that ability. It's not about the haircut or the shave, or the beard trim, although like I can do that well. I have to be able to do that well. I think people, for the most part, come and sit in my chair because they know that I'm going to genuinely give a shit about their life and about who they are. And I'm going to show, like, for that time they're in my chair, it's all about them. And like, I love doing that. Like, and yeah, like if somebody starts, so if we were to start talking about something super emotional and you started to cry, I would cry with you. I have absolutely no doubts. Like I would just be totally in there feeling what you're feeling. And that's just something that is natural to me. I've like always been that way, you know? And so does that answer the question at all? Okay. All
kind
right,
of like you definitely like half of it, definitely half of it. And like you talk about that being there with somebody and anyway, that crying holes in another part, but it's not just being able to talk to somebody and get them to feel comfortable and open up and share with you because that's something that goes through with the sheriff's office, but you're not going up to inmates or however, and then being like, oh, and now here's all of this of me. I'm going to show you these parts of me. It's very much getting them to feel comfortable and share with them, but you're not sharing who you are as a core with them. You're not really talking about your prostate in a sense with them. So how much of that are you now able to give? You're not just being a place for somebody to talk to, but you are saying now I'm going to show you me too. You're giving that part of it with my hands because I can't talk without moving my hands. No. I do. Like I've always been a pretty open book. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, not so much with when I was a jailer, but I was a lot more of an open book than most officers. And I think that allowed me to connect with them in ways and to, you know, like they got to see that I was a human being, that I wasn't just a robot in a uniform, you know, with like no sort of emotion or concern. So yeah, no, I've always been the one place in my life where I wasn't an open book was in my marriage.
Oh yeah.
With my ex-wife. I failed miserably at opening up and trusting and showing her my true self, which is probably one of the reasons why it didn't work out. There could be a million reasons why it didn't work out, and there is a million reasons why it didn't work out, and it wasn't supposed to work out, and I'm totally fine with that.
Yeah.
You know, beautiful, beautiful things have happened for both of us since we got divorced, you know? So, but yeah, that was a place where I didn't feel vulnerable. And I think we could get like way deep into my psyche and going back to like a trust issue with women and mothers and all this other kind of stuff, you know, like I'm sure we could dig in there if you want to, and I'm fine to, you know, but no, I think my ability to share my life with others, like I don't really get embarrassed very easy. Like I'll tell, like I'm a pretty fucking open book. Like there really isn't anything that I'm not willing to talk about, you know? Yeah, does that...
No, yeah, that's more.
Okay.
That's absolutely...
Yeah.
I'm going to call bullshit on you.
Oh, boy. Okay. All right, perfect. All right, man, let's do this.
Is it the embarrassing part?
No, I think... because I would describe myself the same way.
Okay.
And then when it comes to real stuff, that shit's locked up so fucking tight, nobody's fucking getting in there, let alone me.
Okay.
Right. I think we will, and
I'm already preparing my defense, by the way.
well, I'm going to lump the two of us into the same category and just describe the way that we would do things. Like we're outgoing, we're very nice, we're very open, we're very kind. Like we, you know, want to hear people, we want to connect with people. And at the same time, we're more than willing to like put ourselves out there and be open and exposed and kind of lead the way in the sense just to make people feel comfortable and things like that. But then like when it comes to really, really, really deep stuff, and like true vulnerability and sitting in those spaces and in those uncomfortable spaces, I don't think we do that easily with even the people that we're closest to, even the people that we, do you know what I quote unquote need to do that with, let alone with complete strangers. Not complete strangers, but let alone with the, you know, cursory group of people that we surround ourselves with. Because I've seen you get embarrassed really easily. I've seen you, like, I've seen you put on a front and not super bad. Not, you know, you definitely don't walk around with a mask on. You definitely don't walk around with a front on by any means. But I've seen you kind of put on this, and it looks uncomfortable when you put it on, but it's like this jacket of, God, how do I fucking describe it? A lot of times you're self-deprecating to where you put on this jacket of like, but I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. I'm just a dumbass, blah, 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 blah.
Okay.
Right. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yes.
And I think that's a defensive mechanism. I think that's a way to disconnect from the deeper stuff that is being brought out, is kind of coming to the surface, is kind of rising up, and then you minimize and self-deprecate as a way to distance from it and push away from the uncomfortableness, and then to keep things more light or more lighthearted or more safe, even though we might be in the space of vulnerability and difficult things and difficult topics and things like that.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about now.
Yeah.
Do I still do that, or am I getting better at it in the last few months?
I think you're getting better at it for sure. I think you're definitely, practicing something different and being aware of it. I think I have seen you become aware of it, whereas I don't think you were necessarily aware of it in the beginning. And what I mean by beginning is kind of when you and I reconnected and started hanging out and going to group and things like that.
No, I would agree with that 100%.
Yeah.
I think this whole, if I could get super personal and vulnerable here, like that whole series of experiences I've had in meditation where I've connected with my, like this little naked 5-year-old version of me.
It's so beautiful. I don't know if you want to kind of share portions of it, but it's really fucking beautiful.
Yeah. Okay. So a few months back, backing up, I've become more aware of self-deprecating behavior, and in large part thanks to Shelley, who's been a guest on this podcast, an amazing woman.
Shelley, is it Mare?
Shelley Mare.
Shelley Mare. Love Shelley.
Yeah. Shelley called me out. She had invited me down to this cacao ceremony in southern Utah, and this was something that was completely new to me. This was me kind of dipping my toe into the whole hippie world, because Shelley's like a legit badass hippie girl that she's very put together, but she's very hippie too. And she invited me down to this cacao ceremony, and we spent the whole weekend together, her and another really cool lady named Cree. And those two, they were kind of like my little woodland fairy spirit guides on this like 3-day adventure down in Boulder, Utah. They took me on some amazing hikes, and we got a chance to like spend some time together. And I'm just going to be totally like vulnerable here. Like I felt like Shelley and I might have been like leading up to that, starting to make a little bit of a connection. I'm not going to say romantic necessarily, but I think there was some excitement and some connection and some feelings there. And like while we were down in Boulder on this little adventure, I felt like an energy shift in her, and she started to like distance herself from me a little bit, where I thought we were making this connection. And immediately I started to think that I had messed it up somehow, and I started to second guess myself and whether they really wanted me there or not, or whether they were starting to get sick of me or whatever. Not that I was being annoying necessarily, but just like I felt like my presence there, like I felt an energy shift and I didn't know what to do with it. So I immediately went back to self-deprecating humor, where, or I would say, like she would ask me, okay, so like, this is kind of our plan for the day, like, how do you feel about it? Whatever. Like, oh yeah, that's cool. That's great. But if you guys want to go to spend some time together, like I'll go do something else. And, trying to like hint that I would be okay with them separating themselves from me. I was feeling insecure. And after, half a day of this, she just called me on it and was like, what, it's really unattractive when you make jokes about yourself like that. I mean, she was just flat out blunt right in my face, and I was like, oh. And that was where, excuse me, I first became aware of self-deprecating behavior and how that is not necessary. I thought it was being humble, and it's not humility. It's self-hate and self-punishment is really what it is. And you just beating yourself up and rejecting yourself first before somebody else has a chance to do it to you. And which is something that I've resorted to since I was a little kid. And so everybody thinks I'm real funny, because I can joke about myself. And I think there is a time and a place for that. But the way that I was using it was not in a healthy way. And she just flat out, was like, that's really unattractive when you do that. I'm just saying. I was like, oh shit. Okay. And like her whole energy shift had nothing to do with me, but that's what I do. I always go back to thinking, well, what did I do to ruin the situation, or what did I do to change it, or whatever, So anyway, so that started to make me aware of that. And, so fast forward now to a few months ago, that was back in the summertime, and the guys in group had called me on it too. Like the example that Craig just gave, where, I would say something in group that was like really meaningful and wise and appropriate for the situation that the man I was talking to was in. And then I would always follow it up with like, yeah, but what do I know? I'm just this, stupid barber, like I would just ruin, excuse me, I would just ruin everything that I just said. I took all the value out of it because I didn't believe that there was any real value to what I was saying, which goes back to how I viewed myself. So I end up doing this meditation with some really intense breath work. And I learned it from a combination of the Wim Hof method, breath work, and this guy named Joe Dispenza, I think his name is. And he wrote this amazing book, Becoming Supernatural. And in that book, he talks about a meditation that falls right in line with Wim Hof stuff, where you can oxygenate the body and then take in a deep breath and clench certain muscles. And they're basically your bandha muscles from yoga, so asshole up, belly button in, chin down, tightening that core area in your kind of chakras, just tightening everything up. And then you can push pressure up into your head. And one of the things that happens is it like decrystallizes the pineal gland. And also it forces your cerebral spinal fluid to circulate at a faster rate. And it'll actually stimulate the pineal gland to dump a little DMT into your system. And I started practicing that. And I think it can be dangerous if you don't do it right. But I felt like I had a pretty good grasp on it. Anyway, so I start meditating. I start doing some really heavy breath work. And I start to push my cerebral spinal fluid. And I'm feeling like some really powerful feelings come on. And I just kind of drifted away into, I was still conscious. I wasn't completely disconnected, but I was definitely in a different headspace. And I found myself in my living room of my grandmother's house, where I lived when I was a little boy. My parents were divorced when I was 3. And for I don't exactly know how long, but for a time I lived with my grandparents. And they were like these angels. While my mom was kind of doing her thing and dealing with her stuff, I was there with my grandparents, and it was this beautiful time in my life. And there's this picture that my grandmother has of me when I'm naked with a beanie on, and I'm standing there in her living room with this big, huge smile on my face, and I got my hands on my hips and my little freaking Christmas lights hanging down there, and it was just like this super cute, innocent picture. But that picture embodied everything that was innocent and naive and loving about me as a person, and where I was at that time. And later, after that picture was taken, soon after, I ended up moving in with my mom and stepdad, and things got a little rough for me for the majority of my childhood after that. But that picture represented my innocence. And so I'm in this meditation, I'm in my grandmother's living room, and I'm staring at that little naked boy with the beanie on. And I walked up to him and I kneeled down so that we were eye to eye. And I just embraced him. I hugged him and I picked him up. And I just felt this intense love for that little boy. And I put him down and I cupped his face and just looked into his eyes. And I had this incredible self-realization that I would never say the things to that little boy or to any little boy that I say about myself and to myself. And I looked at him and I said, I'm not going to beat you up anymore. You are me. And everybody, not everybody, but, we hear a lot about how, we need to connect with our inner child and loosen up and have fun. But I think I understand what that means on a little deeper level now. Like, that little boy is still alive, and he is who I really am. And if I could just let go of judgment and ego and fear of embarrassment and all of these things that we learn through our time as we grow into adults, if I could just let go of those things and just be that beautiful, naked, vulnerable, innocent, loving, happy little boy, how much better would my life be? And so since then, I've tried to make an effort to be mindful of that and to not beat myself up anymore. We all make mistakes, we all make poor decisions, and we spend a lot of our time in the past. Instead of being present, we spend time in the past trying to relive these old situations and think how we could have done things better and whatnot. But that time is gone. And so why do I continually beat myself up over things that I can't change? And why do I say, God, you're such a fucking idiot. I'm so stupid. Stephen, why are you so fearful? Why are you so weak? Like, I would never talk that way. I would never talk that way to my sons. I have 2 sons that look eerily reminiscent to their little blue-eyed versions of me when I was a little boy. And I would never say that to them. I would just be positive to them. I would be real with them, and I need to be real with myself as well, but I wouldn't devalue the things that they say, so why do I do that to myself? And it's easier to not do that when I remember that little boy, that he is there. And that's who I really am. And if I can be more naked and more vulnerable and more happy and non-judgmental and positive and just stare at the world with my hands on my hips, exposed and, with a big grin on my face, how much better could things be, or how much more power would I have, So, yeah. So that happened. And so hopefully since then, Craig, you've noticed a little bit of a difference, because I'm trying a lot harder to not second guess myself anymore and not beat myself up so much.
Oh. What do you want to say, babe?
Thank you for letting us see that part of you, for sharing that. That was so beautiful. I just want to tell you, go find a nudist colony, go get on a nude beach, go have fun, go be exposed, go let all that out. Yeah. That is amazing. Yeah. Wow. I'm really moved. I don't have a lot of time trying to find words right now. I just want to sit in it. That was, wow.
It's a cool experience, man.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And it's powerful. I remember when you talked about it, when you shared it and everything like that. It's powerful. And I have seen a shift and a change in that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I have a long way to go, but I'm trying. I really am.
I want to ask you if they're where you're at right now in your life, if we take a snapshot of your life, and that snapshot is this big picture that has everything in your life, not what would you change? Because I'm fairly certain I know that the answer to that, meaning you probably wouldn't change anything, but what is missing from that picture that you want to bring in, that you want, you know what I mean? Like, if we take a snapshot of your picture and it's got your life as it stands today, it's got all your interpersonal relationships, it's got your own inner dialogue, it's got your experiences, it's got your present, where you're physically at in regards to your business and your life and your relation, everything, just this snapshot of where you're at right now. What's missing from that picture that you hope to add and bring in over the course of time, right? That you're striving to bring into that picture and into your life right now. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah. I would say the becoming an instructor in the Wim Hof method, I think would be the thing that I want to see added to that picture. And I would like to see myself shift out of cutting hair full time and doing that more and still owning the barbershop and managing it. But if I'm not going to be insecure and I'm going to speak as if I'm speaking to my little boy, or I am my little boy. I have a powerful influence on a lot of people's lives. And I see it when I sit in my barber chair. I get text messages frequently from my clientele who are now mostly my friends who, say, because you talked so highly of the keto diet and because you went on it and lost all that weight, like you inspired me. And, I have a guy that comes into the shop that he's a big man. He's like 6'6", and he's probably in the 400 pound range, maybe more. But anyway, he's lost 180 pounds in the last 10 months. And he's moving and exercising, and he's reconnected with his wife in a romantic way, and she's on board with everything that he's doing, and they work out together. And he credits me as being one of the major factors in that huge change in his life, just because I shared my life with him. And all of the things that have happened to me and continue to happen to me have all benefited the people around me. And so I feel like I'm meant to be some kind of teacher or some kind of influence, and teaching the Wim Hof method is I think that's the way that I'm going to be able to do that. So, I think I have a beautiful gift to give to this world, and I'm looking for other ways to share that gift with others. So yeah, I think that hopefully that answers the question. But yeah, it is definitely becoming an instructor in the Wim Hof method. That's what was a huge catalyst for me becoming the man I am today. So that's what I want to see happen next. And
that was hard for you to go through, huh? Not the Wim Hof method thing, but kind of hard to acknowledge that you have that effect over people, to kind of own that space of,
yeah, I
am this thing.
Yeah. I've never considered myself that, obviously. But I'm just seeing it happen, and people keep giving me feedback constantly, keep texting me like, hey, I really don't need a haircut, but I would just love to come and sit in your chair and be in your energy because you're so inspiring, and you always say such beautiful things, and you always make me feel good. And I'm like, I'm hearing that too many times, too frequently to ignore it at this point. So there must be something, I must have something to give to this world. But really all I've done is just share my journey of trying to become my own shaman or guru or teacher, or, I'm just trying to do that for myself so that I don't feel like I need to constantly go to other people for things. Like I want to trust my own intuition more and go deeper into myself. And in the process of doing that, I share my experiences, and it just blows people away. So, I must be meant to share my little naked, happy self with the world. So yeah, that's my goal. That's what I see happening, hopefully soon. So.
You keep giving me the look. You're like, see why I love him?
Man.
Yeah, I don't know what else the fuck to talk about. Like, that's fucking awesome.
What about you?
What about me?
Yeah, man.
What with your picture?
Oh no.
I feel all the things that are racing through my head right now, because I don't want to talk about myself right now. And there's so many times on this podcast where I avoid talking. That's not true, because I do talk about myself a lot, but I avoid talking about myself often because I feel like it's taking away from the guests. I feel like, this isn't the episode for Craig to talk about him or himself. This is the episode for Steven to come on and share Steven and share his energy. And I have to remind myself, I think I told Dan this at one point a long time ago. I listened to his podcast, the Everyman podcast that he hosts, because I like Dan. and because I want to know more about Dan. And I'm like, dude, you got to talk about yourself more, because yeah, I like the guests and I'm interested, but I'm not engaging over and over and over again because I want to hear the guests that you have on. I want to hear more about yourself. So I have that all racing through my mind right now because I don't want to talk about myself, but at the same time, I know that that's probably a benefit in some way, shape, or form. And then also, when I posed that question to you, which kind of came out of thin air in the way that I posed it and described it and talked about it, then as you were answering it, I was doing that thing of visualizing what my fucking picture looks like. And I feel like I have some blank spots in there. I feel like I have some spots that are dead space, that are like, I visualized it very, very clearly of this big, huge, beautiful picture with all of these beautiful things that make me up, and the people in my life that matter. They're on that picture, the experiences. Do you know what I mean? It's all this like beautiful, beautiful, beautiful fucking picture that I would have as a snapshot for where I'm at right now today. And then I could see some blank spots and like dead space is what it looked like. And that was like, fuck. And then I stopped thinking about it and just really focusing on what you were saying. Cause, those dead spots, or that blank, see, it seems like it's a dead spot. That's what I keep thinking of it as, but it's just like it feels like blank spaces that haven't been filled in yet. And I think that those spaces that haven't been filled in yet are the spaces internally within myself that I'm still working on. Because as you were talking and as you were sharing everything like that, I like saw your picture, or what I perceive to be your picture, right? And I see this big, beautiful, bright Stephen in the center of this picture and everything around him. And then I was like, oh, fuck, like I don't see that for my picture. Like I had a hard time even finding myself on that fucking picture. And I think those are the blank spots where I'm not... This makes me sad. Fucking Energy is Love podcast. Now I'm getting angry and uncomfortable. This is what I was talking about last night, where how it's easier sometimes when we don't feel these things and when we don't have awareness of them, because I can feel all sorts of shit coming up in my body right now, and I can feel the physical effects that it's having on me right now, and I'm getting super uncomfortable. I can feel like tingles and sensations going up my spine, and my words are slowing down because I'm having a hard time verbalizing the thoughts. And when I look at that picture for my life and the snapshot of my picture, I'm having a hard time finding myself in that picture. And that makes me really sad. And I don't know what that fucking means. Like, I don't know what that fucking means for where I'm at right now. I think those dead spaces that I see are the spaces where I'm still looking for who I am and for myself. And it's like I can see everything else that I'm like really grateful for, and see everything else that's taking place in my life that I'm really happy about, and I'm really glad. And then there's these blank spaces that are kind of big, and I think those are the spaces where I'm not super connected to who I am, or what I want to be, or not even like what I want to be, but just not connected to myself, because I'm having a hard time finding myself on that picture right now. And I can see myself on that picture, but he's like super small and tiny and over in the corner and like hiding behind a big fucking beautiful tree and doesn't want to step out and be a part of his fucking life. Fuck this shit. I don't want to look over at you, baby, because it makes me super fucking sad. Like, it's really, really funny how we practice vulnerability at group, and we practice being in that space. And you've watched me time and time again. And it's easier to be vulnerable with you than it is with her. It's easier to show up and open up and stay in the space of vulnerability and the uncomfortableness that ensues with you and with group and with men than it is with her. Mm-hmm. And I think the reason is because I feel like I have more to lose with her. I have more at risk. You're going to love me no matter what. And if you stop loving me, or if we stop hanging out, or if we don't see each other, I'm going to be okay. You know, I'm much more accepting of the present moment space of the love that you and I share, and being okay to show up in that space in my raw vulnerability, because if that suddenly goes away, I'm okay. I'm going to miss you, and it's going to suck, but it doesn't mean that, like, I die. Mm-hmm. And Stephanie, my love, that's why I struggle a lot with really raw, open vulnerability with you, because there's more at risk. There's more to lose. Because I love you way more than I love Steven. And I love Steven a lot. And if I lose you, that's a much bigger loss. Because you're a pretty big part of that picture. Go ahead. I thought you were going to say something.
Was, but then I said I was just going to lean over and do this.
Yeah, fuck, man. Perfect time. Get up and go pee. I'm not in the middle of anything for any fucking shit's sakes.
Well, I figured I'd let you two have a moment.
Yeah. No, go take a piss. Go to the one in our bedroom, because otherwise we'll hear you peeing on the podcast.
Okay.
And nobody wants to hear that. I didn't flush either when I went, so then we didn't hear the toilet flush, so...
Okay.
Go ahead. What were you going to say, baby?
You think my love's conditional?
No, I don't think your love's conditional at all. At
it's
all.
Okay. This isn't where you make me feel better.
I'm not making you feel better. That's the really... Well, we have to keep talking, because...
You can edit this part out if
I don't
this
want to
doesn't
edit
work.
this part
Well,
out.
then let me... Then chill.
Okay, but...
And talk your way through the uncomfortableness till it feels better.
Well, no, it's fading. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, because you keep talking through it.
I rode the wave. I don't want to sit in that wave in this exact moment in time for an extended period of time simply because we're on a podcast. And it's not that I don't want people to hear it or experience it.
You did a podcast with us fighting. So you can do a podcast with something like, you calm down for a minute. Hey. Hi.
Does it make sense what I said, though? Like, it's easier to do it with him than it is to do with you. And it's not because I don't want to do it with you. It's because that there's more to lose in that space. And I know 100% that your love isn't conditional. Your love isn't, your love is pure. Your love is 100% unconditional. But why are you shaking your head?
You're just trying to make me feel better.
I don't think you feel bad right now.
Then why are you trying to make me feel better?
I'm trying to
make you feel better by making me feel better. Making it okay by making me feel better.
Yeah, I'm trying to articulate what I expressed and said so that it makes sense.
What if I already understand?
You do, because you felt me. You felt what I shared. I realized the episode that we did, because this is, anyways, I did that shaking my head a lot.
Yeah.
It was funny when I went back and edited it and listened to it. So I don't know, baby. I don't know what to say at this point. Yeah. We have to say something. We can't sit in awkward silence while Steven goes and pisses on the podcast.
And can't ever, right? Like, it's got to keep going.
Yeah.
Keep going. Don't have a moment. Don't have a moment. Would you, like, if when he was pausing through that moment, or if I'm pausing through a moment, are you like, oh, you can't sit in awkward silence. You got to say something. Do you say that when anybody else has a moment?
No, of course not.
All right, then.
But I did that.
You talked your way out of it. Now you're done.
Well, right now, but in the moment I wasn't.
You hear the bullshit, right? You hear the bullshit of that. like as you would say to Stephen, I'm going to call you out on your bullshit.
It is awkward and it's really hard. Excuse me. I don't know if I've ever wholeheartedly verbalized that, but I have felt and thought that of like, it's not easy to be vulnerable with Stephen. It's not easy to be in that space. And I still struggle in that space, and I still like challenge myself in that space. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Show up to men's group each week, and I'm not always open and vulnerable, and I resist going into that space quite frequently, and it's very, very challenging, and it's very, very hard. But when I finally get there, and when I finally do it, it is easier because of what's at risk. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But the part that makes me like super fucking sad right now is that idea that I'm not on that fucking picture. Like I'm just this small little fucking portion of it. That's the part that I really have to sit with and think about and feel and expand more on, because I think there's some meat there. Like there's some answers there. And I want to figure out what those are. In the meantime, I'll just feel it rather than try to figure out what those answers are. Like, it sucks to think that I'm not a part of my life. What does that fucking even mean? Do you know what I mean? That I'm not a part of my life, or that I'm such a small part of my life. That doesn't make any fucking sense. Does that mean that I'm not like participating in my life? Yes, in some degree. Does that mean that I don't show up in my life for me? Yeah. Yeah, it goes back to self-love and how much of a value I place on that. Because I definitely outwardly love and support and show up for other people way more than I do for myself. I would agree with that wholeheartedly. Well, that's why the birthday was super important, and that's why this year's going to be a fucking big deal for me. It was my birthday. You know it was my birthday. Both of you fucking know it was my birthday on Saturday. Yeah. I don't want to sit in this awkward uncomfortableness of me fumbling through my fucking words anymore. So one of the two of you have got to fucking speak. Stephanie, I love you.
Love you too.
Are you going pee now?
It's my turn.
Okay. You may want to flush because I love you. See, baby, I love you now. I feel like shit. That's okay. That's my feeling. What's up?
I feel better.
Good. Yeah.
Yes. Feel lighter.
Yeah. What do you think after what I just said? Okay.
I'm thinking a lot of things. I think of I'm listening to what you're saying, and I don't know if it's necessarily a bad thing to have blank spaces. I'm trying to interpret your words and feelings the best way that I can. Do you feel like you're so involved with showing up for everybody else that you're not showing up for yourself? Is that what you mean? Okay.
Yeah, I think that's an aspect of it for sure.
Okay. Do you want to connect with yourself, or is there things in there that you're afraid of facing and feeling and dealing with?
I think there's things in there that I know are going to be difficult to face and feel and deal with, but I also don't feel like there are any unknowns. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I feel like I have a really good understanding of what has made me. And I'm not afraid to confront those things. However, obviously I am to some degree because I avoid it, right?
Yeah.
You know, you described your 5-year-old little self, your inner child, that kid.
Yeah.
Who, it's really funny because I've heard you talk about him a lot. Like it's something that you have shared before and things like that. Yeah. And I have a very, very clear picture of that kid, even though I haven't ever seen that picture that you have. I have a very, very clear picture of that kid.
Yeah.
And it makes me super fucking happy that I have that. And then I try to think about, I have gone to that space in some way, shape, or form with myself before. Yeah. But it's been a while and I haven't sat in that space. It's almost like I had an awareness of that inner child, that little boy of who, my little boy of who I was. It's almost like I watched him for a while, but never connected with him, never showed up. So I know who he is. I can see him, but I never went over and spent a whole bunch of time connecting with him and allowing him to also see me. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Could he be the voice of all of the things that you're afraid of? Could that be coming from him?
Yeah.
So when you're dealing with one of your children and they're afraid, how do you deal with that? As a father, playing that role.
I mean, my head's running now because I'm thinking of all the different, examples that I have of that and all the different ways that the kids are afraid and things like that. But where I'm at today, I just show up and I sit with them.
Do you honor their fear? Do you listen to it?
Yeah.
Do you honor and listen to your own fear?
Nope.
Okay. I don't know what to fucking tell you then. I'm just kidding. No.
Well, I feel great, but I don't know what else to talk about.
Okay. Just so you know, I didn't feel like I was a guest. I just thought I came here with the expectation that it was just us going to sit around the table and shoot the shit.
That's totally what it is.
There is no star of this episode. It's just 3 people.
Yeah, no, that's always my internal dialogue, right? Mm-hmm. Is because that's why I like the podcast, because it is just that conversation.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like yeah. No, that's what it is. It's just a conversation with us.
Okay, good.
Steph, I love you. You have got to, yeah. Do you want to say anything before we wrap up, baby?
I do.
Okay.
I'm going to stretch.
Okay.
Because I'm worth it. So, mine wasn't hard, my picture, because it was obvious right off the bat. I'm not in it. 100%. It wasn't a question. It was like, oh, this is so sad, or what is missing? It was like, oh, me. And then that was it. And I just kind of settled into that like nothing. And then you had this big production over yours. And I'm like, oh, I'm supposed to be upset by that. And then I didn't get upset until I thought, God, I'm so far from the picture that nobody even thought to ask me what mine was. So I'm going to paint myself in the picture. I'm going to put myself in there. Whether anybody thinks to look at it or not, here I am. That's my stretch. That's what I want to say. Now I'm done.
Well, Stephen, thank you very much, man.
You're welcome.
I appreciate it. I love you.
Thank you. I love you too. I love you both.
Yeah.
I'm so happy that I got to share in this space with you.
Yeah, likewise.
I'm so happy to know you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
You're welcome. I thought it was being humble, and it's not humility. It's self-hate and self-punishment. Yeah, I think I have a beautiful gift to give to this world, and I'm looking for other ways to share that gift with others. You're like this ball of light in a dark place. I was starting to think you were talking about avocados and handcuffs, and this was going to go someplace like kinky for a minute.
Oh.